Joining me now is former State Department official Christian Whiton. Christian, it's always great to see you. Thank you for joining us tonight. Let's dig right into this because we've got a seemingly tense situation here. And this is from the reaction, China's reaction to the Taiwanese president visiting California last week. Now, China had a similar reaction when former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi went to Taiwan in August. Having said that, it's very tense. It seems like China is definitely flexing its muscles, right? But it doesn't want to be seen as an aggressor. It almost seems like it's waiting for one thing to happen, one thing to say that it was provoked. What are your thoughts?
Well, it keeps getting more and more aggressive, actually. I mean, there was an outbreak by China's military after former Speaker Pelosi visited the island. But think about this. I mean, this is a self-governing island. We can have a one China policy and say that Taiwan is a part of China, but everyone knows that that is a lie, knows that Taiwan is a separate country, a very different place from China, and that it's a place that China repeatedly threatens to invade and is now having this full dress rehearsal of a blockade plus attack. So it's, just bizarre that China runs around, says it's going to broker a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia, is engaged in diplomacy between Iran and Saudi Arabia, and is sort of pretending or trying to pretend to be a global player, and then is in fact just threatening a democratic, peaceful neighbor that just wants to be left alone.
Yeah, and the Chinese have essentially said that they are ready to fight. They're ready to go. Christian, Senator Lindsey Graham here in the United States saying that he is open to sending U.S. troops to Taiwan. Listen.
Strategic ambiguity is not working. China, after Afghanistan, believes that the store is open, that you can go in and take whatever you want on Biden's watch. I'd be very much open to using U.S. forces to defend Taiwan because it's in our national security interest to do so.
What do you think of that, Christian?
I think it's extremely unlikely you could have a war against Taiwan that wouldn't involve U.S. forces and Japanese forces and Australian and Philippines forces. Graham is a little off-key, as was Representative McCall, the Foreign Affairs Committee chairman, who was out there in saying that U.S. soldiers should be involved. I think that sets the wrong message. Taiwan isn't asking for a U.S. presence or U.S. bases to defend Taiwan. They're asking for the arms to defend themselves. And unlike Ukraine and a lot of other people, the Iraqis, for example, where we have to pay everything, Taiwan pays for all of its military goods that it buys from us. In fact, there's a $19 billion backlog of arms that have been approved, which they're ready to buy, which we have gone to Ukraine, or which are held up otherwise with red tape. So yes, I think the United States would have to be involved if we have huge bases in Okinawa, Japan, which is only a couple hundred miles from Taiwan. Guam is right there. There are thousands of Americans who live in Taiwan. But stressing first that we should have troops on the ground, to use that often used terms, I think just misses the point.
Okay. I want to switch gears for a moment and get to this story because the DOJ and the Pentagon are now investigating these highly classified documents that were leaked online regarding Russia's war on Ukraine and the extent of the U.S.'s knowledge with respect to our allies. Christian, your thoughts on the leak, the fact that these documents were out there online, we didn't know they were out there online for some time, and also the fact that they might have been altered. So it's difficult to really understand exactly what happened here, but still presents a national security threat when you know that classified information is literally being leaked on the internet.
Yeah, no, it's pretty bad. The government takes many steps to protect classified information. There's a lot of over-classified information, a lot of information that's just essentially chatter and analysis. But this looks like an actual military assessment of Ukraine's ability to wage war, how Russia and Ukraine are doing the war. And if it's true, which is a big if, and it has been altered, it looks like, it paints a picture of a Ukrainian military that's much closer to collapse than the public is being led to believe. The public is being told that Ukraine is preparing for a springtime offensive against Russia, and this looks like instead they're about to run out of munitions, in particular air defense munitions for its S-3 Soviet-era air defense system. And if that happens, Russia could gain air superiority and really change factors on the ground in Ukraine quickly. This is the one foreign policy success that Joe Biden and his administration are holding out. And if it's just a paper tiger, if it's not true, if it's going to be cast right alongside the failure in Afghanistan, certainly not good for the White House.
Yeah, absolutely not. Senator Tom Cotton sounded off on this earlier. Let's listen.
We need to get to the bottom of who had access to these purported documents, how they could have leaked, what potential compromises they could be. But we also, again, need to have confidence that if we provide the Ukrainians the weapons that they've been urging us over the last year, that they can defend their own territory.
And Christian, you know, it sort of is a slap in the face to the United States to have these documents leaked when we are spending so much to fund the Ukrainian end of this war at a difficult time here economically for most Americans across the country. To only hear this news that our, you know, intelligence feels that the Ukrainians are not strong enough. Now, Senator Cotton is saying that, you know, we should continue to believe that the Ukrainians will be strong enough, that if we continue to fund them, that they can defeat Russia, but that's difficult for some to take in.
Right. I'm the odd man out on this. I disagree with that. I think that if you fight a war of attrition against Russia, I mean, there are a couple of countries that might be able to do that: the United States, China, India. Ukraine, though, with its much smaller population, going to have difficulty doing that. And Russia has a long history of starting wars in a very sloppy manner and still about half the time prevailing in the end. They do better when they are attacked, as opposed to this instance where they're the aggressor. But nonetheless, you know, a situation where Europe really needs to be doing more. You mentioned earlier in this report how Macron, the French president, said that, you know, they shouldn't get involved in a fight over Taiwan. Well, maybe they ought to be doing at least a little more in their backyard in Europe. We're paying 75% of the burden of the Ukraine war. That ratio ought to be slipped. That should be Europe paying the lion's share.
And it was so interesting, I'm paraphrasing here, but Macron in his comments essentially said that it wasn't in their interests. You know, when it comes to the allies, right? When it comes to the United States, nobody cares about what's in our interests. They're always saying, go, 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 and help and do what you can. But now the French are saying, well, it's not in our interests. I find that ironic. Christian Whiton, great to see you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.